welcome to this quiet corner of history. Let your mind drift as we journey through a forgotten place, once filled with life, now swallowed by silence. Tonight, we travel to a village where time has stopped, and the walls still remember. Houtouwan, tucked into the rugged cliffs of Shengshan Island, was once a thriving fishing village, a small coastal settlement nestled within the Houtouwan archipelago off China's eastern seaboard. Life here had continued for over 5 centuries, bound to the rhythms of the East China Sea. Its 2,000 or so residents relied on fishing, farming, and a tight-knit sense of community. The village, isolated by its location and terrain, became self-reliant out of necessity. The terrain around Houtouwan was steep, with rocky paths connecting it to other parts of the island. Ferries to the mainland were infrequent, and there were no direct roads. Even basic infrastructure, electricity, water systems, education was a struggle to maintain. Yet despite this, life thrived. Children played in narrow alleyways between stone houses. Smoke rose from wood fires in the early morning. Fishermen set out before sunrise in wooden boats passed down through generations. Every element of daily life was tethered to the sea. Tides determined sleep patterns, weather determined income, and the harvests from the water fed entire families. In many ways, Houtouwan remained timeless. The stone homes were built with local materials, thick walls for insulation, tiled roofs to endure salt winds. Many featured family altars and hand-carved furniture. The communal atmosphere created a village identity that had been stable for generations. But this tranquility wouldn't last. The modern world, in creeping waves, began to close in on Houtouwan. In the 1980s and 90s, China's rapid urbanization brought roads, electricity, and job opportunities elsewhere. Houtouwan, perched on a cliff with no easy access, was left behind. Fishing, once the backbone of the village economy, began to falter. Overfishing in the nearby waters and rising environmental regulations meant dwindling yields. To sustain themselves, families needed outside work. This shift pushed younger generations to the mainland in search of employment. Then came the push for resettlement. The government, recognizing the strain of supporting such isolated communities, began offering incentives for relocation. While some villagers resisted, others saw no future in staying. One by one, families packed up and left, leaving behind homes, memories, and a way of life. By the early 2000s, Houtouwan was functionally abandoned. A few elderly residents lingered, holding on to ancestral homes, but even they eventually moved or passed away. The village, once so vibrant, fell into an eerie stillness. Abandonment didn't bring ruin, it brought transformation. Within a few short years, the village began to disappear, not into rubble, but into green. Vines crept up the sides of stone homes, moss spread across tiled rooftops. Ivy flowed into open windows and down staircases like water. With no humans to cut it back, the forest returned with force. From above, Houtouwan now looks like a painting. Only the shape of the village remains, faint outlines of human architecture swallowed by vegetation. The trees and brush didn't destroy the homes, they covered them, preserved them under a living shroud. This surreal transformation turned Houtouwan into a spectacle. Photographers discovered it first. Images of green-covered homes cascading down cliffside terrain went viral. Social media dubbed it the most beautiful abandoned village in the world. Tourists followed. At first, the visits were unofficial. Urban explorers scaling cliffs and slipping through old paths to see the place firsthand. Eventually, the local government embraced the attention. Wooden walkways were installed, and limited tours were approved, though much of the village remains untouched and treacherous. Despite its newfound fame, Houtouwan remains a fragile, quiet place. The structures still stand, but they are slowly collapsing beneath the weight of nature. Visitors are warned not to enter homes, roofs have caved in, and wildlife has reclaimed corners of the town. Silence is broken only by birdsong and wind. Yet within that silence lies something more profound, traces of human life. In one home, a pair of shoes still rests by the doorway. In another, a red paper decoration, likely from a long-past spring festival, clings to the wall. A rusted bicycle lies half-buried in vines. These remnants offer a strange intimacy. Unlike ruins lost to war or natural disaster, Houtouwan was simply left. The village wasn't destroyed, it was surrendered. Former residents occasionally return. Some visit during holidays to pay respects at family shrines. Others bring their children, pointing out which house was theirs, which path led to school, which cove once held fishing nets. They describe it as both comforting and heartbreaking, a home preserved in green silence. In recent years, the village has inspired artists, writers, and conservationists. It has become a symbol not just of abandonment, but of balance between human life and the natural world. In Houtouwan, nature didn't reclaim land in violence. It reclaimed it in stillness, in softness, and in time. No longer a place to live, it is now a place to remember. When you look at Houtouwan today, wrapped in ivy and silent as the tide, it's easy to imagine that time simply stopped here. But that silence came with a cost. To understand the full story of this forgotten place, you have to understand the very thing that shaped it: isolation. From the beginning, Houtouwan was cut off, not by intention, but by geography. The village is perched on the far northeastern edge of Shengshan Island, one of the easternmost points in all of China. The terrain here is wild and steep, with cliffs rising sharply from the sea and narrow footpaths winding through hills. There were no paved roads, there were no direct ferry routes to the mainland. The only way in or out was a long, precarious journey by boat, by foot, or by sheer persistence. That isolation protected the village in some ways. For centuries, it allowed Houtouwan to exist largely untouched by outside influence. Tradition stayed strong. Families passed down their homes, their fishing techniques, even their dialects, generation after generation. There were no tourists, no highways, no factories, just ocean wind and the slow rhythm of coastal life. But in the 20th century, isolation stopped being a strength. As China modernized, other towns and cities gained new infrastructure: schools, hospitals, electricity, internet. Houtouwan did not. Its cliffs made development expensive and difficult. The island's population began to shift inward, toward more accessible ports and flatter ground, and Houtouwan, left clinging to its hillside, began to fall behind. Daily life became harder. Young people had to leave to attend school. Medical care meant traveling for hours. Supplies like food, fuel, and clean water had to be carried in by hand or boat. As nearby towns grew, Houtouwan shrank, not out of disaster, but out of slow neglect. By the 1990s, the villagers were no longer just isolated, they were stranded. The fishing industry that had sustained them for centuries was beginning to collapse due to overfishing and changing environmental conditions. Catches were smaller, waters were overworked, boats had to go farther to find fish, and that required equipment many villagers couldn't afford. The sea, once generous, was turning barren. The government saw this too. In the 1990s and early 2000s, officials began offering relocation incentives. Residents were encouraged to move inland to larger towns with better services. These were not forced evacuations. There was no fire, no flood, no single crisis, just a quiet understanding. Life here would only get harder. It was time to go. And so they left. One house at a time, one family at a time, the village emptied. At first, there was hope that it might just be temporary. People thought they might come back for holidays, to tend family graves, to keep their ancestral homes standing. But over the years, the journeys became less frequent. The paths grew over, the sea wore down the boats, and eventually, the doors were shut for the last time. Still, Houtouwan is not a tragedy in the usual sense. No war destroyed it, no natural disaster flattened it. It simply became obsolete in the modern world, a place too hard to reach, too difficult to maintain, and too far from the conveniences people needed to survive. But that doesn't mean it disappeared. In fact, its isolation preserved it. While many other abandoned places were looted or torn down, Houtouwan was too remote for that. Its buildings remain remarkably intact. The furniture, the staircases, the doorways, they're still there, buried under vines but not erased. It's as if the village was pressed into a kind of botanical amber, and within that preservation lies something rare, an unfiltered memory of how life once was. Unlike modern ruins, Houtouwan wasn't consumed by fire or flood. It was consumed by silence, and that silence has a weight to it. Visitors who make the journey today speak of a strange atmosphere, not eerie, but sacred. The wind moves through hollow houses, like breath. Trees have grown up through courtyards. Stone walls are cracked but standing, and in places where laughter once echoed, there is now only the rustle of leaves. Some call it peaceful, others call it sad, but everyone agrees. It feels like stepping into a memory, one that doesn't want to be disturbed. For the few former residents who return, the experience is bittersweet. They see their childhood homes overtaken by nature. They walk past the school they once attended, now choked with vines. They remember neighbors who are now scattered across the country, or gone entirely, and yet they often describe a sense of pride that the village has become something beautiful, even in its emptiness. Houtouwan's isolation, once its downfall, is now its guardian. It protects the ruins from crowds, from commercialization, from noise, and in that quiet, the village continues. Not alive, but not entirely dead either, just waiting, watching, enduring. In the next section, we'll explore what Houtouwan has come to symbolize, not just as a physical space, but as a story about change, memory, and the quiet resilience of forgotten places. The future of a place like Houtouwan doesn't unfold like it would in a city. There are no plans for expansion, no skyscrapers to build, no factories to revive. There's no ticking clock demanding progress. Instead, its future feels as slow and winding as the overgrown trails that crisscross the hillside. And that, in many ways, is exactly what makes it special. Houtouwan is not a site of grand ambition. It's a space that invites quiet. It asks nothing from the world except to be left in peace. Yet as more people discover it, there is a growing tension between preservation and exposure. What happens when a forgotten place is suddenly remembered by the world? Already Houtouwan is changing. The soft flow of curious visitors, drawn in by photographs and drone videos, has begun to leave a mark. Footpaths have widened. Plants near the main trail have worn down underfoot. Some walls, weakened by time, lean just a bit more each year. Vines are resilient, but the weight of attention is heavy. That's why the local government is walking a careful line. Instead of fully opening the village as a major tourist destination, authorities have implemented controlled access policies. A few lookout points and observation decks have been built, modest structures made of wood that blend with the landscape. These give visitors a view of the village without encouraging wandering too deep into it. There are no restaurants, no hotels, no gift shops. The silence remains unbroken, except for the occasional voice in the distance or the shutter click of a camera. But even that kind of attention, while minimal, must be managed with care. Conservationists have warned that if tourism increases too quickly, the ecosystem that now thrives in Houtouwan could be damaged. Ivy could be stripped away, soil compacted, animals scared off. Too many footsteps, too many hands, too many curious explorers entering fragile buildings could collapse what time and weather have preserved. The irony is clear. In trying to experience the untouched, we risk touching too much. This is why preservation efforts here look different. There are no grand restorations, no attempts to return the village to its former state. Instead, the goal is to let it stay wild, to let nature continue what it has started, slowly, without interference. And while tourism is one factor shaping the future, so too are the memories of those who once lived there. Elders who left the village decades ago still speak of it with warmth. Many of them have voiced a desire for Houtouwan to remain as it is, not rebuilt, not revived, but remembered. A kind of living shrine to a past that, while no longer practical, still matters. Some families have even asked that their ancestral homes be left untouched, not renovated or modernized, but left in their green wrapping as they would have wanted. The village, they believe, is now a part of the forest. It belongs to the hills and the wind as much as it once belonged to them. A few younger residents of Shengshan Island have expressed interest in creating a small memorial space, not a museum, but a place to document stories, photographs, and names of those who once called the village home. But they too want it to be quiet, low impact, nothing flashy, just a small place to sit and remember. And then, of course, there is time. Time is the truest caretaker here. Every season, the vines grow thicker, the rooftops sag a little more, some staircases collapse, some doorways vanish beneath the green. In another decade, even more of Houtouwan will likely fade from view, but that doesn't mean it will be forgotten. Already, the village lives in a strange space between physical and symbolic. It exists in memory, in photographs, in the imaginations of those who've never even been there. It has become a story, a lesson, a soft voice reminding us of how easily things can be lost and how quietly they can endure. Perhaps that is its true future, not as a destination, but as a reflection of change, of the way people move and landscapes shift, of how quickly we outgrow what once sustained us, and how rarely we return. For those listening to this story tonight, far from that quiet hillside, you don't need to see Houtouwan to feel what it means. The story is simple but powerful. A village was built, a community thrived, time passed, needs changed, people left, and nature came home. There was no great tragedy, no villain, just time. And sometimes, that's the most haunting part of all. So now, as the final moments of this story drift over you, allow yourself to imagine it one last time. The narrow alleyways, wrapped in green, the stone homes with windows wide open to the sea, the silence, soft and total, and above it all, the sound of wind brushing against leaves that grow, slowly, where footsteps used to fall. Houtouwan is no longer a place where people live, but it remains alive in another way. In memory, in mystery, and tonight, maybe, in your dreams. If you were to visit Houtouwan today, your journey would begin long before you ever reach the village itself. The closest city is Shanghai, but Shengshan Island, where Houtouwan rests, lies far to the southeast, surrounded by the restless waves of the East China Sea. After a train or car ride to the coastal city of Ningbo, you'd board a ferry. The ferry cuts across open water and passes through the scattered isles of the Zhoushan archipelago. Finally, you'd reach Shengshan, quiet, green, and steeped in sea mist. From there, the last leg of the journey is done on foot. It's a slow, steep hike up a mountain trail. The air gets saltier, the trees grow denser. Then, quite suddenly, the forest opens, and the ghost village reveals itself. The first thing you notice isn't the silence, it's the color. Houtouwan is green in a way few places are. Not just trees and bushes, but every rooftop, every wall, every crevice wrapped in soft green. The homes, once grey stone with blue tiles, now wear thick coats of ivy. Moss climbs doorways, ferns curl through open windows. Even the narrow stone staircases are coated in a layer of emerald velvet. It doesn't feel like nature invaded. It feels like nature was always here, waiting. The structures are remarkably intact. Most of the village is still standing. The homes, built with thick stone and anchored into the hillside, were made to endure harsh weather. Many walls still bear the original paint, now faded and flaking under vines. Some buildings still have visible address plaques or family names carved into the doorframes. You walk carefully here, not just because the paths are steep and uneven, but because the place feels delicate. It feels like a memory you might step through if you move too fast. Local authorities have installed wooden walkways in certain areas to guide visitors through the village without damaging the vegetation or the buildings. These paths are raised, narrow, and often surrounded by waist-high ferns and sunflowers growing wild. In places, bamboo leans overhead, forming green tunnels that filter the daylight into soft, flickering patterns on the ground. Signs explain the village's history, but they're subtle, tucked into corners so they don't disturb the view. There are no vendors here, no loudspeakers, no guides barking instructions, just signs and steps and silence. You'll often see other visitors, but they move slowly too, whispering, taking photographs, pausing to stare at something small, a rusted spoon in the dirt, a pair of shoes by a door, a red ribbon tied to a post. Every object feels like an artifact. Inside the homes, if you're allowed to peek in, the floors are covered with leaves and soil. Beams have collapsed in some places. Others look almost frozen in time. A teacup on a table, a mirror cracked but still hanging, curtains slowly dissolving in the breeze. Animals have returned too. Birds nest in the eaves, lizards dart along window ledges, bees and butterflies hover over the flowers. At night, you might hear the distant bark of wild dogs or the chirp of frogs echoing through the village like a lullaby. But more than anything, it's the atmosphere that leaves a mark on you. There is no buzz of traffic, no electricity hum, just the wind, and sometimes the sound of waves breaking far below the cliffs. Many describe the feeling as peaceful, others call it sacred, and a few admit that it's haunting, not because it feels threatening, but because it makes you think of your own life, your own home, what it might look like decades after you leave. The government has taken a surprisingly light-handed approach to preservation. Rather than restore Houtouwan or turn it into a manicured tourist attraction, they've chosen to let it exist as it is. The balance between human ruins and plant life is fragile, and too much interference could erase the very thing that makes it special. That said, measures have been taken to protect it. The wooden walkways prevent erosion and keep foot traffic off vulnerable ground. Signs discourage entering certain homes where roofs have begun to sag. Visitor numbers are kept low. Some parts of the village are entirely closed off to give nature room to grow undisturbed. Occasionally, former residents are invited to return for ceremonies or festivals. These events are quiet, respectful affairs, typically involving ancestral offerings, moments of reflection, and guided walks. The people who once lived here often find comfort in seeing their old homes still standing, even if they are wrapped in vines. For those unfamiliar with rural life in China, Houtouwan might seem like a fairy tale, a place too poetic to be real. But for those who know these islands, it is simply part of a much larger story, a story of migration, of environmental change, of economies shifting and villages fading. And yet, among all the forgotten places in China, Houtouwan stands apart. Why? Because it was forgotten so gracefully. It didn't collapse, it didn't burn, It wasn't erased or destroyed. It was simply left alone. And in that stillness, it became something rare. In our final section, we'll explore what the future might hold for this ghost village. Is it destined to fade completely back into the earth? Or will it live on, in memory, in myth, and maybe in a few cautious footsteps along the ivy-covered path? In the modern age, places like Houtouwan are often treated as curiosities, photographed, filmed, posted online with eerie captions and mysterious music. But beneath the images and surface-level fascination lies something deeper. Houtouwan has become more than a village. It has become a symbol. A symbol of what exactly? That depends on who you ask. To some, Houtouwan is a living metaphor for nature's quiet dominance. In an era defined by urban sprawl, pollution, and human expansion, the village stands as proof that no matter how permanent our buildings may seem, they are only ever temporary guests on the land. When we leave, even for a short time, nature doesn't wait. It doesn't ask permission. It returns, soft and slow, like mist creeping down a hill. And in Houtouwan, that return was total. Unlike so many abandoned places around the world, this village didn't burn or collapse. It was covered gently. Every roof is blanketed in moss. Ivy flows like water through shattered windows. Bushes bloom where children once played. Trees rise from kitchen floors. The result is surreal. Not the harsh decay of a ruin, but a fusion of past and present, man-made and wild. It's not destruction, it's transformation. Artists have been drawn to this image. Painters, poets, and filmmakers have interpreted Houtouwan as a kind of post-human Eden. It appears in documentaries and photo exhibitions, often framed as a warning about climate change or rural decline. But the most powerful interpretation doesn't come from outsiders. It comes from those who once lived there. Former residents don't describe the village as cursed or haunted. They describe it as sleeping. They don't mourn its collapse, they respect its endurance. Many speak of the land with affection, not regret. They remember harvesting seaweed, playing on the beach, and hiking the steep paths between homes. Some believe the greenery that has overtaken their village isn't a sign of loss, but of rebirth, a natural evolution. One man, a fisherman who grew up in Houtouwan in the 1960s, returned after 20 years to find his family's home hidden beneath vines. He didn't cry, he smiled. He said it looked peaceful, like the village was being cared for by the earth itself. This perception that nature isn't the enemy, but a guardian, is at the heart of Houtouwan's modern myth. Of course, not everyone sees it that way. Some urban explorers and influencers visit for spectacle. They want haunting drone shots, overgrown staircases, strange angles. To them, the village is a background, a momentary thrill. But even those visitors often leave with more than they expected, because Houtouwan doesn't shout, it whispers. Its power lies not in what's gone, but in what remains. A bowl still resting on a windowsill, a door left ajar, a set of stairs leading nowhere. These fragments are quiet, but they speak. They tell you that people lived here, laughed here, ached here, and then moved on. This emotional weight is what sets Houtouwan apart from so many abandoned places. It isn't terrifying, it isn't tragic, it's tender. There's also something universally relatable about its story. Many people, especially in rural areas around the world, know what it's like to watch a town fade, jobs disappear, schools close, children leave and don't return. Houtouwan is just one example of a global pattern, one that continues today. And yet there's something oddly comforting in knowing that the village wasn't erased. It still stands, cloaked in green, whispering reminders to those who listen. In recent years, the Chinese government has taken steps to protect the village, not from decay, but from overexposure. While some wooden walkways and signs have been installed to guide visitors, most of Houtouwan remains untouched. You can walk the paths, look through the doors, and feel the hush of time without the hum of modern interference. There are no cafes, no gift shops, no noise, just wind, leaves, and the low hum of the sea. In this sense, Houtouwan has become a kind of living museum, not curated, not reconstructed, but left exactly as it was. Its preservation is accidental, but it's more authentic for that reason, and perhaps that's why it resonates so deeply. Because in a world obsessed with progress and speed, here is a place that has surrendered to stillness. Here is a village that doesn't try to be remembered, but simply endures. Visitors often say that time feels different in Houtouwan. Minutes stretch into hours. Sound seems to travel slower. Every step feels like it carries weight, not because of fear, but because of reverence. You find yourself moving gently, whispering without meaning to, as if speaking too loudly might disturb something sacred. And maybe that's the true essence of the village, a reverence for the ordinary. Not everything has to be preserved in glass cases. Not every ruin needs to be rebuilt. Sometimes, letting go is a kind of honoring, and in letting Houtouwan go, its people may have created something more lasting than they ever imagined. In the next part of our journey, we'll travel deeper into the present and future of Houtouwan. What's being done to protect it? What stories are still hidden beneath the vines? And what does this ghost village say about the world we're building today? If a building could whisper, Houtouwan Castle would do so in echoes. Soft, slow echoes that stretch through stone halls and spiral staircases, never quite reaching their end. Visitors say it feels as though the walls hold memories, not memories of life, but of waiting for something to return, or something to escape. What's especially strange about Houtouwan is how it resists easy categorization. Most castles were built for one of a few purposes: military defense, noble residence, or administration. But Houtouwan seems to defy all three. There are no strategic elements that make it suited for warfare. It was never the seat of a powerful family, and as best historians can tell, it didn't serve any real administrative purpose for the crown. Its very location seems like a statement of isolation. No rivers, no towns, no royal roads, no mines, no trade. Houtouwan sits in nowhere, not just physically, but spiritually. It's as though the castle was never meant to connect to the world around it, but rather to stand apart, like a scar that won't fade, or a lid placed firmly on top of something that should never have been uncovered. Over time, the legends only grew. Locals refused to go near it. The surrounding forest became known for strange sightings, ghostly figures, winged creatures, voices in the night. Some even reported odd time distortions, losing track of hours, or arriving at the castle faster than seemed possible. And the chapel, the room built directly over the pit, became the epicenter of these fears. Dark, narrow, and cold, the chapel feels more like a tomb than a place of worship. The floor, legend says, is sealed with thick stone slabs meant to trap the abyss below. But it's not just the floor. Look at the walls, and you'll find murals unlike any other in the region. Medieval frescoes that depict not biblical stories, but strange creatures with animal heads, humans in torment, and hybrid beasts holding weapons. One image in particular stands out: a half-human, half-horse creature aiming a bow with the left hand. In medieval Europe, this was deeply unusual. Left-handedness was often associated with evil or the unnatural. For a figure in sacred art to be left-handed was interpreted by some as a signal, a warning that these were not divine beings. They were not even earthly ones. What were they? Some say demons. Others say something worse, things without names. Over the centuries, monks were said to have maintained the chapel, but even they reportedly kept their distance, praying outside rather than within. And stories passed down through generations spoke of strange happenings, sudden illness, hallucinations, violent dreams among those who stayed too long. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, Houtouwan became a magnet for curiosity. In the 19th century, as Europe experienced a revival of interest in folklore and the occult, the castle was visited by scholars, writers, and occultists. Some came to study, others came to perform rituals. One particularly mysterious guest was a poet named Karel Hynek Mácha, who allegedly spent time near Houtouwan in the early 1800s. Though most of his writings don't directly reference the castle, there are subtle nods to a place of haunting silence, where the forest hums under stone, and the earth dreams of fire. Whether or not he truly visited the castle, the legend of Houtouwan as a site of dark power continued to grow. In the 20th century, the castle's history took a darker turn. During the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia, Houtouwan was reportedly used by the SS, a fact that in itself is chilling. The Nazis were known to be obsessed with the occult, and they had a particular interest in places believed to be thin, locations where the veil between worlds might be weaker. To this day, no one fully knows what the SS did inside Houtouwan, but there are reports of sealed rooms, strange symbols etched into walls, and experimental research conducted in secret. Some say screams were heard from deep inside during those years. Others claim the pit itself was uncovered once again. When the war ended, the castle was abandoned, yet again, as if it could never hold on to human inhabitants for long. Time and again, people entered and eventually left, often with stories they refused to share. And so the silence returned. The stones sank deeper into the earth. Ivy curled up the walls. Birds stopped singing near the windows, and the forest once more began to reclaim what had briefly been taken from it. To walk through Houtouwan today is to step through layers of reality, not just into the past, but into the parts of history that refuse to stay still, the parts that squirm just beneath the surface, the parts that look back. In the next part of our story, we'll explore the myths, the hauntings, and the unanswered questions that still cling to this place like moss to stone. But as you rest now, picture the chapel still standing, still sealed, still holding. Whatever waits beneath Houtouwan Castle, it has been patient for centuries, and it is still waiting. Houtouwan Castle has no right to still be standing. It was not placed near rivers to refresh it. No farmlands ever fed it, no armies protected it, and no royal families proudly claimed it as home. Yet it remains perched in the woods, a shape in the mist, as if held in place not by stone and mortar, but by purpose. Over the centuries, it should have crumbled. It should have collapsed like so many forgotten places do, left to rot under ivy and rain. But Houtouwan didn't. It aged, it wore down, but it never surrendered. And for many who've stood beneath its grey towers, that's the final mystery. Not what waits beneath it, but why it refuses to go away. Castles are often reborn as museums, wedding venues, hotels, or ruins with storybook charm. But Houtouwan resists all of that. It does not welcome you, it allows you. In recent decades, caretakers have attempted to preserve it, repairing roofs, stabilizing walls, opening it to tours. But even then, it remains distant, like it's participating in the present, only reluctantly. Unlike other historic sites, it has no grand moments to retell. There were no royal declarations signed here, no great love stories, no epic betrayals, just stone, cold and watching. Yet tourists come anyway. They walk its corridors. They look out the windows that were never meant to open. They stand in the chapel where nothing grows and nothing echoes, and when they leave, they often say the same thing. That Houtouwan doesn't feel like a place where things happened. It feels like a place where something is still happening. There's a weight to it, a presence. And not just in the legends, but in the structure itself. Architects have commented on the castle's strange angles, the asymmetrical walls, the narrow passageways that lead nowhere. The layout doesn't make sense. Rooms seem arranged not for people, but for containment. It's as if the castle wasn't designed to be lived in, but to watch over something. And even its decay follows odd rules. In areas where the stone should be crumbling, it holds firm. Where ivy should overtake the walls, it stops short. Where light should pour in, it remains dim. And always, the chapel at the center. Unchanged, untouched, still built directly over the spot the legends called the gateway, still sealed. What keeps it standing? Maybe it's simple luck, good stone, careful maintenance, or maybe it's something deeper, something no one fully understands. A kind of pact between structure and earth, a balance, a warning. Many places like Houtouwan have vanished, lost to time, lost to silence. But this one won't. It holds itself together. Some say it's because the job isn't finished, that whatever it was built to guard still stirs beneath. Others say it's the castle itself that holds the secret, not what's underneath, but the stones, the placement, the very act of building something where something was never meant to be. In a world that often erases its mysteries, Houtouwan endures as a quiet rebellion. It doesn't shout to be remembered. It just never allows itself to be forgotten. So what are we left with? Not proof, not records, not clear answers, but a feeling, a presence, a castle in the woods that no one asked for, built on a hole that no one wanted, still standing long after its story should have ended. And maybe that's the lesson Houtouwan leaves us with, that some things, no matter how buried, refuse to stay gone. That belief, fear, and memory can anchor a place long after maps erase it. And that silence isn't always empty, it's waiting. So if you ever find yourself in the forests of northern Bohemia, and you come across a castle that rises unexpectedly from the trees, quiet, weathered, watching, don't expect to find answers inside, but do expect to feel something. And if the wind picks up as you walk past the chapel, if the stone beneath your feet feels just a little warmer than it should, if the birds stop singing as you near the walls, just remember what they say. This castle was never meant to keep people out. It was built to keep something else in. Sleep well. And if Houtouwan stays with you, you're not the first. Before Houtouwan was stone and mortar, before legends of monks and monsters, before any written history of the castle appeared, there was already a story being told here, not in words, but in belief. Because long before Ottokar II ordered a fortress to be built atop a hole in the earth, the people of Bohemia already feared something beneath their feet. And that fear, The idea that there are places on Earth where the ground thins and the world beneath peers through is ancient. To understand the full mystery of Hauska Castle, we must step even further back, beyond architecture and politics, into the shared mythology of the underworld that existed across civilizations. The concept of a gateway to hell isn't unique to medieval Bohemia. In fact, many cultures across time and space believed there were literal locations where the boundary between the world of the living and the dead, or something else entirely, was dangerously thin. The Greeks had Hades, and they believed the entrance to it was physical. One site often identified was a cave at Cape Tainaron in southern Greece, where legend said souls passed through after death. To the Romans, there were similar portals, volcanic fissures and steaming lakes like Lake Avernus, believed to be entrances to the underworld. The vapors, the strange stillness, the way birds avoided the area, all signs of its unnatural role. In Norse mythology, the underworld Helheim could be reached by descending deep beneath the earth, a dark realm ruled by the goddess Hel, where the souls of the unworthy would reside, far from Valhalla. And even older, in Sumerian myth, the goddess Inanna descends into the underworld through a series of 7 gates, shedding part of herself with each level, until she stands naked in a place where no sound reaches, and from which none return unchanged. What do these stories share? They don't treat the underworld as a vague concept. They treat it as a place real, terrifying, and nearby. And that idea of hidden cracks between worlds was never just symbolic. People feared actual locations that pulsed with something wrong, places where logic broke down, where animals fled, where the air turned strange. So when villagers in Bohemia centuries ago found a deep, gaping fissure in the ground that never seemed to end, it's not surprising what they believed. They said it was a wound in the world, a place where things crawled out, where screams echoed back from no bottom, where even the birds refused to fly overhead. And they weren't alone. Across Europe, folklore speaks of similar places. In Wales, there's talk of Anwen, a hidden kingdom beneath the earth. In Germany, travelers spoke of caves that breathed in the winter, exhaling mist and rot. In Slavic folklore, which would have shaped early Bohemian beliefs, there's a recurring figure, the Chort, a dark spirit that lives underground, emerging through cracks to torment humans. Some scholars believe the pit beneath Hauska may have been the site of pre-Christian rituals, an ancient sacred site long before any castle was built. In many pagan traditions, deep pits or sinkholes were used for offerings, food, bones, symbols, sometimes even animals, and in extreme cases humans. They weren't sacrifices in the modern sense. They were barter, an exchange between worlds. If the opening beneath Hauska had such a reputation, then the decision to build directly on top of it might not have been random. It might have been desperate. Imagine a village plagued by fear, unable to fill the hole, unable to forget it. Then imagine a ruler, told by his advisors or religious leaders that only one thing could contain the evil: stone, sacred stone, built tall and thick. Walls not to defend from invaders, but to trap what lay beneath. And so Hauska Castle was born, not as a fortress of power, but a prison of belief, a seal. And that belief that something lies beneath the surface, watching, has never quite faded. To this day, the forest around Hauska is quiet in strange ways. Animals avoid it. Visitors describe feelings of heaviness. And though many walk its halls without seeing a single ghost or hearing a single whisper, they leave with the sense that they were not the ones doing the watching. This isn't uncommon for supposed thin places, areas where the veil is believed to wear down. The idea is not always that a spirit reaches through, but that a part of you stays behind, that a thread of your presence is now tied to a place that lives in between. And perhaps that's what keeps people returning to Hauska. Not because they expect answers, but because the silence there feels full of memory, of others who've stood in the same place, hearing nothing, but somehow knowing they weren't alone. In our final section, we'll return to the present, to the strange resilience of Hauska Castle itself, a structure that refuses to decay, a ruin that won't collapse, a story that refuses to end. But for now, breathe slowly, let the forest settle, and listen to the earth, not for sound, but for feeling. For centuries, Hauska Castle has stood not as a place to live, but as a mystery to solve, and for just as long, people have tried. Some with candles, some with rituals, others with cameras and notebooks. But all of them, from monks to mystics, from soldiers to skeptics, have left with more questions than they arrived with. Let's begin in the 1800s, a time when much of Europe was gripped by a fascination with the supernatural. Romanticism was in full swing, and legends were being collected like rare books. Hauska, with its sealed chapel and its whispered stories, was precisely the kind of place that drew attention. During this time, it's said that occult groups began to show interest in the castle. These weren't rowdy thrill-seekers or village ghost hunters. They were often educated, well-read individuals who believed there were places in the world where the veil between realms was thinner and that Hauska was one of them. Rituals were performed inside the chapel. Circles were drawn in chalk. Latin phrases echoed off the stone. Some claimed they could hear responses. Others claimed the rituals went too far. There are unverified stories of sacrificial rites, though nothing has been formally proven. What we do know is that many groups came to the castle seeking to open whatever was sealed beneath. Whether they succeeded or not, the stories of strange phenomena increased around this time. Then came the 20th century, and with it, war. During the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia, Hauska was reportedly seized by the SS and used for purposes still not fully understood. We know the Nazi regime had an intense interest in the occult, particularly Himmler's SS division, which actively investigated ancient sites believed to hold mystical power. They believed certain locations could serve as portals, not metaphorically, but literally. Hauska, with its pit and its bizarre architecture, matched many of the criteria they were obsessed with. The details of their activities inside the castle remain largely unknown. Some local accounts speak of guards stationed around the clock, lights burning through the night, equipment brought in and then removed under heavy cover. A few villagers claim to have seen trucks arriving under moonlight, carrying crates and machines with wires and steel rods, the kind not used for war, but for experiments. After the war, the castle was abandoned again, but what was left behind wasn't quite empty. Rooms that had once held only dust and silence now held symbols, strange carvings on the inside of wooden beams, scorched circles in the stone, markings that didn't match anything from local history or religion. And perhaps most disturbing of all, parts of the floor near the chapel appeared to have been tampered with, as if someone had tried to open it or had briefly succeeded. Jump ahead to the modern era. In the decades since the fall of communism, Hauska has reopened to the public. It's no longer sealed off. Tour guides lead curious visitors through its winding corridors. Photographs can be taken, rooms can be explored, but something has changed. In the 1990s and early 2000s, paranormal researchers began arriving at the site with modern tools, EMF detectors, thermal cameras, audio recorders. They weren't looking for history, they were looking for answers. And some believe they found them. In one investigation, a recording device captured what sounded like multiple voices speaking simultaneously, despite the room being empty. In another, temperature changes of nearly 15 degrees were documented in a sealed hallway. Most notably, several researchers independently reported the same phenomenon in the chapel, the sensation of being pulled downward, as if gravity were heavier directly above the sealed pit. Other visitors claim their electronic equipment fails in specific parts of the castle. Drained batteries, frozen cameras, even compasses that spin without reason. And then there are those who come not with science, but with intuition. Spiritual mediums, empaths, and psychics have been brought to Hauska to read the space. Almost all of them report an overwhelming presence in the chapel, not violent, but heavy, not angry, but watchful. One psychic said she heard a voice tell her, "You are not supposed to be here, not yet." Even skeptics walk away with unease. Some chalk it up to suggestion, architecture, or natural magnetism, but few leave untouched by the atmosphere. Because Hauska doesn't entertain, it doesn't perform on command. Instead, it lingers. And for those who try to investigate its secrets, the castle offers only fragments, never the full picture. A sound, a cold spot, a carved symbol, a flicker in the dark. But always, just beneath the surface, the sensation that the castle is aware, not alive, not thinking, but watching, waiting, and possibly remembering. In the next chapter of our story, we'll step even further back, not into science or legend, but into myth, where the idea of a pit to the underworld wasn't strange at all, but part of a deeper, more ancient belief system that spans continents. For now, allow the castle to fade into silence again. Its walls have heard your questions, but answers do not come easily here. Long after the chapel was sealed, long after the villagers stopped whispering about the hole, and long after history had supposedly forgotten Hauska, the castle remained, still, heavy, watching. And though the doors were sometimes closed and the rooms left empty, the legends never left. They waited like dust in the corners, quiet but always present. You don't have to believe in ghosts to feel something inside Hauska. Visitors report it constantly, an overwhelming sense of being observed, not by people, but by the place itself. Let's return for a moment to the chapel, the heart of the castle, built directly over what locals once called the gateway to hell. The stories surrounding it are persistent and eerily consistent. Cold air rising from the sealed floor, sounds coming from underneath. Not loud, but deep, a kind of groaning or humming, sometimes scratching. What do people hear? What do they feel? One man described the sensation of walking over the floor like standing above something alive, something vast, ancient, and waiting. Others say their dreams shift after visiting, even if they stay only an hour. One woman claimed she saw a face pressed up behind the stone, not physical, but in her mind, as though the stone were somehow translucent to her alone. And it doesn't end there. In various parts of the castle, people have reported shadow figures, tall humanoid shapes that don't behave like normal shadows. They move without a source. They appear and disappear without pattern. One visitor described seeing a black figure pass silently through a stone wall, only to reappear further down the corridor, standing still. Rooms grow colder without warning. Items shift from where they were placed. Dogs refuse to enter certain rooms. Children grow quiet, uneasy. In one case, a man visiting during the early morning hours described hearing chanting faint, distant but rhythmic. He was alone in the building at the time. Another reported an entirely different phenomenon, time loss. He entered at midday with a small group of researchers. They expected to be inside for perhaps 45 minutes. When they returned to the entrance, 3 hours had passed, though their watches hadn't moved. None of them remembered the additional time. Whether these stories are folklore, exaggeration, or something more, they follow a pattern. Hauska doesn't frighten like a haunted house. It doesn't shout, it waits, it observes. And perhaps that's what makes it more unsettling than most so-called cursed places. Hauska is not dramatic, it is persistent. Another part of the legend involves black-winged creatures, sometimes described as half-man, half-beast. These entities were supposedly seen by early villagers near the fissure long before the castle was built. They were said to fly only at night, never uttering a sound. And though you might dismiss that as old myth, something odd remains. Even today, birds avoid flying directly over the castle. Not always, not absolutely, but enough to notice. Then there's the matter of dreams. Many who stay at or near Hauska, especially overnight, report vivid, often disturbing dreams. Some dream of falling endlessly into a pit. Others dream of standing in front of a massive stone gate with something behind it, something begging to be released in a voice that sounds almost human. Interestingly, the dreams often repeat, even between people who've never met. And some of these people leave with lasting impressions, choosing never to return. Others, however, come back again and again. They describe a sense of being pulled or drawn back, not out of fear, but fascination, like the feeling of almost remembering something. What's perhaps most mysterious is how ordinary Hauska can seem in photographs. To those viewing it from a distance, it's simply a grey stone structure with a steep roof, surrounded by forest. But photographs don't show what happens when you stand in its halls. When you lean against the stone, when you descend into its lower chambers and feel the weight of something underneath. Because that's the secret of Hauska. It doesn't try to frighten you. It only waits long enough for your own thoughts to fill the silence. There's a strange heaviness to the air, a pressure that builds quietly. The rooms are never truly dark, but never truly light either. You begin to question whether you're alone. Even when you are, you might start to hear soft knocking in the walls, or catch a glimpse of something in the corner of your eye. Is it real? Is it just suggestion? No one can say for sure. But for hundreds of years, Hauska has been a gathering place for these experiences, like a net collecting whispers. And the castle, it never defends itself, it simply stands, unmoving, unchanged, unfazed, as if it knows the truth isn't in what you see, it's in what you feel. And whatever you carry with you into Hauska, it might carry that back out again, or leave something else in its place. In the next section, we'll look at the people who've tried to uncover Hauska's secrets, from occultists to modern-day researchers. But for now, listen to the quiet, let the air settle, because in Hauska Castle, even silence has a memory. Welcome, settle in, let your thoughts slow, and allow yourself to drift gently into the past, a past wrapped in stone, shadow, and whispered legend. Tonight, we're traveling far from city lights and into the heart of a dark bohemian forest, where something strange rises out of the earth. Not quite a fortress, not quite a home, but something that has endured for centuries without a clear reason. This is the story of Hauska Castle, a place that was never truly meant to be visited, yet has never stopped being watched. Tucked into the remote woods of the Czech Republic, far from any natural border, trade route, or royal road, Houska Castle stands in silence, a building that, at first glance, seems like any other old fortress. But look closer, and the oddities begin to pile up. It has no water source, no kitchen. Many of its windows are fake, just openings with painted black panes. Its layout is backwards, facing inward, not outward. And most of all, there's something very unusual about what lies underneath. You see, the legends say that Houska Castle wasn't built to keep people out. It was built to keep something in. Let's begin at the beginning. As far back as the stories go, the land on which Houska stands was once a dense, untamed forest. Locals avoided a particular spot, a strange opening in the ground, a deep fissure in the limestone that never seemed to end. People said it wasn't just a pit, but a gateway to hell itself. This was no metaphor to them. According to medieval tales, villagers believed dark creatures emerged from this pit, things with wings, claws, and voices that didn't echo right. Travelers who approached the hole felt sudden dread. Animals avoided it, and some said the sky above it seemed to darken even when the sun shone. By the mid-1200s, a Bohemian ruler, Ottokar II of Bohemia, ordered a stone fortress to be built directly over the hole. But unlike a typical castle, its strongest walls and defenses weren't pointed outward toward invaders. They were focused downward, right over the opening. The chapel at the heart of Houska was placed directly above the pit, sealed with thick slabs of stone. The builders, or so legend says, filled it with sacred imagery, holy crosses, and protective symbols in hopes of containing whatever was beneath. The story goes that prisoners condemned to death were offered a chance at freedom if they agreed to be lowered by rope into the hole as a test. What happened next became part of Houska's oldest legend. The first man lowered into the pit lasted only a few moments before he began screaming. When they pulled him out, he looked decades older, his hair gone white, his skin wrinkled, he spoke nonsense. He never recovered. Whether true or not, that story and others like it spread throughout the region. People came to believe Houska was built on a literal crack between worlds. And though the tales varied, the central fear remained. The castle wasn't meant to protect its lords, it was meant to guard the world itself from what slept below. But here's where the story becomes even stranger. For centuries, nobody lived in the castle. No nobles, no courts. It wasn't a home, nor a seat of power. It sat mostly empty, watched over by caretakers and monks. The roads leading to it were minimal, and it was deliberately isolated. This raises the question, why build such a massive stone structure in such a remote place, and then abandon it? Why go through the trouble, the cost, the labor, to wall off an uninhabited pit in the middle of the woods? And why, even today, do people still report an eerie quiet as they approach? Visitors describe birds going silent, strange pressure in the air, the feeling that something is watching, not from above, but from beneath. Inside, Houska is cold. The thick stone absorbs sound. The corridors twist without clear purpose. One chamber leads into another without explanation. You might find yourself standing in a room with no doors, only one narrow slit in the wall for light, or perhaps for something else to watch through. Despite centuries of war, Houska was never attacked. It wasn't needed for defense. It saw no great battles. It just existed. So why did it endure? That's what makes this castle so captivating. It has survived through kings, empires, revolutions, and modern regimes. Yet its purpose has remained shadowed. It's as though the castle refuses to collapse, refuses to fade, and for those who spend time inside, many leave with the sense that it remembers, that the walls know you're there, that beneath your feet, something else might still be waiting. In the next section, we'll move deeper into Houska's strange timeline, exploring the castle's hidden history, the occult rumors, and the secrets written between the cracks of stone. But for now, rest in the knowledge that some structures are more than walls and roofs. Some places are built to contain what words cannot. Decades have passed since the sudden evacuation of Pripyat, yet the stories and memories tied to School Number 1 linger strongly, echoing like whispers through its empty halls and crumbling walls. For those who once called this place home, and for those who have dared to explore its silence, the school represents more than just an abandoned building. It embodies a frozen moment in time, a childhood interrupted, and a community fractured forever. Former residents often speak of a profound emotional connection to the school. It is a place steeped in pride for what once was, sorrow for what was lost, and haunting mystery for the silence that followed. For many, the school is a physical and emotional anchor to their past, a symbol of innocence that was cruelly cut short by forces beyond their control. Their memories paint vivid pictures of classrooms filled with laughter, the cheerful chaos of recess, the solemnity of lessons, and the comforting routine that framed daily life. Teachers who were present during those final days before the evacuation recall the tension and quiet desperation as they tried to maintain normalcy for their students. Despite the growing unease outside, inside the classrooms they continued lessons, sang songs, and reassured frightened children who sensed that something was wrong but could not yet understand its full gravity. Some teachers spoke of holding back tears as they watched their students pack hurriedly, knowing that this moment would forever change their lives. In the years since, countless memoirs and interviews have preserved these personal histories. Former students have recounted the surreal experience of returning to the ruins, often as adults, as an act of remembrance and mourning. To step back inside the school is to walk through a ghostly archive of a life suspended mid-breath. Some have described the overwhelming flood of emotions, nostalgia, grief, and a poignant sense of loss as they gaze upon the worn desks, faded murals, and open books left behind. Urban explorers and paranormal investigators have added their own narratives to the school's lore. Many report sensations that defy easy explanation: sudden chills in rooms untouched by cold air, the soft sound of footsteps echoing in deserted hallways, and whispers that seem to float just beyond hearing. Shadows flicker at the edges of vision, and some have seen fleeting apparitions resembling children darting between corridors or standing silently at windows. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, these experiences underscore the powerful emotional charge that the site holds. Local folklore has embraced these stories, weaving a tapestry of legends around the school. The notion that the children's spirits linger, playing unseen games, whispering secrets, and keeping a silent watch over their once vibrant halls, has become a compelling part of Pripyat's haunted reputation. This blending of history, memory, and myth creates a rich cultural landscape where the boundaries between the past and present blur. Scientific studies of the site offer another perspective. While radiation levels throughout much of Pripyat have diminished to safer levels, pockets within the school remain hazardous for prolonged visits. This lingering danger contributes to the school's aura of mystery and reinforces its status as a place apart from ordinary experience. Researchers must balance curiosity with caution, aware that the building's physical deterioration parallels its emotional fragility. Artists, writers, and filmmakers have found inspiration in School No. 1's poignant story. Their works often emphasize the school as a metaphor for lost innocence and the abrupt rupture of normal life. Paintings depict sunlit classrooms overgrown with ivy, photographs capture shafts of light filtering through shattered windows, poems lament the silence where laughter once rang. These creative expressions invite viewers and readers to engage with the school's history on a deeply personal level. Visitors who step inside the ruins often describe a profound stillness that is both unsettling and strangely comforting. The absence of sound is not emptiness, but a kind of presence. A space filled with memories that hang in the air like dust motes, illuminated by fading light. Some speak of an almost tactile feeling of being watched, not in menace but as a gentle acknowledgement from the past, a soft brush on the shoulder, a faint lullaby carried by the wind, or the distant echo of a bell ringing in the mind's ear. Whether these sensations arise from genuine paranormal phenomena or the powerful imprint of collective memory, they reveal how the school transcends its physical form. It becomes a bridge between the living and the remembered, a site where history breathes and lingers in the silence. At the same time, the school stands as a testament to resilience and endurance. Despite the devastation wrought by the disaster and decades of abandonment, the structure remains a monument to the lives it sheltered and the dreams it nurtured. It reminds us that even in the face of tragedy, memory persists, and through memory, hope. The ghosts of Pripyat School are not dark or threatening, they are mournful and protective, holding space for the past and urging us to remember the cost of progress and the fragility of human life. In this place of shadows and silence, the school invites contemplation and respect. It speaks softly but insistently, telling stories of children who laughed, learned, and lived here before the quiet came. In the final section of this part, we will explore contemporary efforts to document, preserve, and interpret the school, as well as the challenges faced in safeguarding this haunting relic for future generations. As the sun sets over the silent halls of Pripyat School, we are reminded that even in the quietest places, memories linger. These ruins hold stories of children's laughter, dreams unfinished, and a past that gently whispers through the cracks. Though time moves forward, the echoes remain, soft, enduring, and ever present. Thank you for joining this journey into a place where history and memory meet in stillness. If you're ready, you can continue listening to our fourth and final story, it dives even deeper into mystery and gets truly chilling. But for now, rest easy and let these whispers fade gently into your dreams. As we move deeper into the story of Pripyat's abandoned school, it becomes clear that this place is more than just empty walls and forgotten classrooms. It is a living symbol, a space where echoes of the past linger, inviting reflection on history, memory, and the lessons that endure long after the tragedy itself. The school, frozen in time since that abrupt evacuation, stands as a poignant reminder of human fragility and resilience. It is a testament to lives interrupted, dreams unfulfilled, and a community forever changed. Yet, it also embodies hope that through remembrance, understanding, and preservation, the stories of those children and teachers will not be lost to the silence. Many who visit the school speak of a profound emotional experience, one that transcends mere curiosity or historical interest. There is a feeling, often described as a gentle weight, that settles in the heart, a quiet sorrow mixed with reverence. The knowledge that these halls once echoed with youthful laughter and learning, now replaced by silence, touches something deeply human. This emotional resonance gives the school a unique place in the landscape of abandoned places. It is not simply a relic to be documented and studied. It is a living memory that calls on us to remember and to learn. The story of Pripyat School extends beyond its physical boundaries. It reminds us of the cost of technological progress, the vulnerability of communities, and the enduring impact of disaster on human lives. It speaks to the universal themes of loss and survival. In the decades since the disaster, efforts to tell this story have grown. Documentaries, books, exhibitions, and art projects have sought to capture the spirit of Pripyat School and to share it with wider audiences. These works do more than recount facts. They evoke emotions, provoke questions, and inspire reflection. Artists have portrayed the school as a haunting symbol of interrupted childhoods and forgotten histories. Writers have explored the myths and legends that grew in the absence of human life. Photographers have captured the eerie beauty of decay and nature's reclamation. Together, these efforts ensure that the school remains a vibrant part of cultural memory, not just a distant and silent ruin. At the same time, the lessons of Pripyat School extend into the present and future. It stands as a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of human error and environmental negligence. It challenges us to consider how we approach technology, safety, and responsibility. Preserving the school is not just about maintaining a building, it is about safeguarding a legacy, one that reminds us to listen to history's warnings and to honor the lives it affected. In practical terms, this means supporting conservation efforts, encouraging respectful visitation, and promoting education about the disaster and its aftermath. It means ensuring that the stories of those who lived and worked here continue to be told. Furthermore, the school invites us to consider broader questions about memory and place. How do physical spaces carry meaning beyond their material existence? How do ruins become sites of remembrance and storytelling? How do nature and human history intertwine to shape our understanding of the past? These questions resonate far beyond Pripyat, touching on universal human experiences of loss, memory, and connection. In the quiet halls of the school, where dust motes dance in fading sunlight, where vines creep over peeling paint, and where silence speaks volumes, we find a space for contemplation, a space where history, memory, nature, and myth entwine to create something profoundly moving. As we reflect on this, we are reminded that places like Pripyat School do not belong solely to the past. They are part of our shared human heritage, reminders that the stories of individuals, families, and communities matter deeply. They challenge us to hold memory with care, to respect history with humility, and to carry lessons forward with compassion. In closing, the haunted ruins of Pripyat School call us not just to look back, but to engage with the present and future. They urge us to listen closely to the whispers in the walls, the rustle of the trees, and the echoes of children still playing in our collective imagination. And in doing so, they offer a quiet hope that through remembrance and reverence, life continues, even in places where silence seems absolute. The haunting silence of School Number 1 in Pripyat has not gone unnoticed by the world. Since the Chernobyl disaster cast its long shadow, the abandoned school has become more than just a forgotten building. It is a powerful symbol of history, tragedy, and the resilience of memory. Yet preserving such a place is no simple task. Years of exposure to the elements have taken their toll. The building's concrete shell is cracked and crumbling in places. Paint peels from walls like fragile layers of skin. Rust eats away at metal window frames and playground equipment. The floors, once polished and bright, are now layered with dust, fallen plaster, and the slow encroachment of moss and weeds. Rainwater seeps through shattered windows and holes in the roof, accelerating decay. Nature continues its slow reclamation, and time has etched its marks everywhere. The challenge for preservationists is to respect this delicate balance, to honor the natural transformation without allowing the history to be lost entirely. Inside the school, every surface is a canvas of memory. Chalkboards frozen mid-lesson, open books left on desks, forgotten belongings like scarves and notebooks. These relics tell stories of lives interrupted. Even the faintest remnants become precious artifacts, fragile links to a vanished world. Documenting these details has become a priority for historians, photographers, and archivists who work tirelessly to capture the essence of Pripyat's schools before more of it disappears. Their efforts include detailed photographic surveys, video recordings, and collection of oral histories from former residents. Digital preservation also plays a vital role. Three-dimensional scanning and virtual reality recreations allow the school to be explored remotely, preserving its atmosphere and history for those who cannot visit in person. These technologies bring the silent halls back to life in new ways, inviting a global audience to witness and remember. Yet preservation is not without its obstacles. Radiation levels, although significantly reduced, still pose health risks in some parts of the school and city, limiting access and complicating restoration work. Safety concerns restrict the time researchers and visitors can spend inside, making thorough conservation difficult. Additionally, there is the question of purpose. Should the school be restored to its former state, or should it be left as a ruin, a poignant reminder of loss and abandonment? Some argue that its current state tells the story more powerfully than any restoration could, that the cracks and decay speak to the passage of time and the fragility of human endeavors. Local and international agencies have debated how best to approach these questions. Some projects aim to stabilize the structures to prevent collapse, while others focus on protecting specific artifacts and murals from further damage. Preservationists walk a fine line, balancing respect for the site's solemn history with the practicalities of conservation. Despite the challenges, the school continues to attract visitors from former residents revisiting their childhood, to curious explorers, historians, and artists seeking inspiration. For many, stepping inside School Number 1 is a deeply moving experience, an encounter with a place where the past lingers palpably in every corner. The school also plays a role in education and remembrance. Documentaries, exhibitions, and books bring its story to audiences worldwide, ensuring that the lessons of Pripyat and Chernobyl remain vivid and relevant. In some ways, the school has become a living memorial, a space where memory is actively preserved through storytelling, photography, and cultural engagement. This ongoing dialogue between past and present helps keep the spirits of the children alive, not as ghosts to fear, but as memories to honor. The ruins of Pripyat School are a powerful reminder of humanity's resilience, that even in abandonment and loss, there is meaning to be found. They invite us to reflect on history's fragility and the enduring strength of remembrance. In the next section, we will conclude by reflecting on the broader significance of places like Pripyat School, sites where history, memory, nature, and myth entwine, and how they continue to shape our understanding of the past and our hopes for the future. When the last bus left the streets of Pripyat, and the doors of School Number 1 closed behind them, the city was swallowed by a silence unlike any other, a silence that was heavy, thick, but not empty. What followed was a slow, patient invasion, not by people, but by nature. In the months and years that passed, without footsteps echoing through its halls or voices filling its classrooms, the school began to change. It was as if time itself softened its edge, allowing vines, moss, and grass to creep gently over cold stone and cracked concrete. Nature reclaimed the space, but it did so with a kind of reverence. It did not rush in to obliterate, but rather wrapped the building in a quiet embrace. Outside, the playground, once a joyful arena of laughter and childhood games, grew wild. Grass sprouted through cracks in the asphalt. Wildflowers bloomed where children once ran barefoot. The rusty chains of the swings creaked softly in the wind, motionless yet alive, like sentinels keeping watch over a lost world. The towering trees surrounding the school cast long shadows over the walls, their branches reaching as if trying to touch the secrets hidden inside. Inside the classrooms, the transformation was slower, but no less striking. Desks sat covered in layers of dust, some overturned, others still aligned as if waiting for students to return. Chalkboards, once scribbled with math problems, poems, and lessons in history, now bore faint remnants of white chalk, slowly fading into the darkness. Windows, cracked and broken, let in the elements, rain, wind, and sunlight, painting the floors with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The scent of old paper, mixed with damp stone and earth, filled the air. It was a smell both foreign and familiar, a reminder of life paused and memories preserved. The murals painted on the walls, bright reds, blues, and yellows of Soviet-era propaganda and cheerful scenes of children playing, peeled and cracked, yet still whispered stories to those who looked closely. Nature's reclamation was not just a physical change, it was a transformation of atmosphere. The school became a place suspended between worlds, between past and present, life and silence. Many who have walked the halls speak of an eerie calm, a feeling that the building itself remembers its purpose and the people it served. There is a quiet reverence here, a respect that the ruins command without words. Visitors tell of soft noises, footsteps that don't belong, whispers carried on the breeze, the faint creak of a door opening long after it should have closed. Some say these are echoes of the past, trapped in the very walls and floors. The idea of memory embedded in architecture is not new, but here it feels palpable. Scientists and historians study the site's decay and radiation, but even they cannot explain the sensation many feel, that the school holds the breath of the children who once filled its rooms. The ruins serve as a physical reminder of what was lost, but also of resilience. Despite the disaster, despite decades of abandonment, the school stands as a testament to the passage of time and the delicate balance between destruction and renewal. Outside the building, wildlife has flourished. Deer wander through the empty streets, birds nest in the rafters, and wildflowers bloom where concrete once ruled. The interaction between nature and ruin creates a haunting beauty, a quiet contrast between life's persistence and human absence. Yet beneath this peaceful surface, some feel an undercurrent of sadness. The school is not just a relic, it is a memorial, a space frozen in the moment before tragedy struck. It holds stories that will never be told, lessons never finished, and lives forever changed. Locals and visitors alike describe a sensation of being watched, not menacingly, but tenderly, as if the children's spirits still linger, keeping a silent vigil over the place they called home. Whether these are ghosts, memories, or something else, the feeling is undeniable. The school becomes a symbol, not only of loss but of connection, bridging past and present, the living and the remembered. In this place where time seems to fold back on itself, the ruins invite contemplation and respect. They remind us that history is not just recorded in books or monuments, but also in the spaces people once inhabited and in the silent echoes left behind. In the next section, we will explore the personal stories of those connected to the school, former students, teachers, and residents, and the myths that have grown around this haunted place over the years. The morning after the explosion, the city of Pripyat was already beginning to change, though many didn't yet understand how deeply. It was April 27, 1986, and the sun rose over a city about to be emptied. Buses and military trucks rolled quietly down the wide, empty streets. Families were called out of their homes, told to leave everything behind. 2 hours to pack essentials, a toothbrush, some clothes, perhaps a favorite toy. Pets were abandoned, beloved plants left on windowsills. Children hurried down stairwells clutching their mothers' hands. Teachers gathered students with calm voices, but inside, fear was palpable. Many did not want to leave. After all, it was supposed to be temporary. A few days at most. School number 1, once vibrant and alive, was abruptly emptied. Desks sat covered in dust. Books lay open on desks as if waiting for students to return. Chalkboards still bore unfinished lessons, as if frozen in time. The silence was overwhelming. The laughter, the footsteps, the murmurs, all vanished. The evacuation was orderly, but urgent. Soldiers sealed off the city, controlling access. For years, Pripyat would stand abandoned, a ghost town left to decay. Inside the school, nature began to reclaim the spaces. Cracks formed in the walls, vines crept through broken windows, moss spread across floors. The air smelled of dust and forgotten memories. Yet, amid the decay, the building kept the echo of life. Some say the spirit of the children lingers here. Soft whispers carried on the wind, shadows glimpsed from the corner of the eye. People who have ventured into the ruins speak of an unshakable feeling that the school is more than stone and glass, that it holds stories, memories, moments caught between past and present. In classrooms where lessons were once taught, faint sounds seem to stir, the scratch of chalk, the soft murmur of voices, the distant ring of a bell, but no one is there. Researchers and explorers who have visited note a peculiar stillness, an eerie quiet broken only by the wind and their own footsteps. But beyond the silence, some have reported strange phenomena. Fleeting figures glimpsed in windows, footsteps echoing down empty halls, sudden drops in temperature, and inexplicable feelings of being watched. Whether these are ghosts, memories, or something else remains a mystery, and yet the school stands as a testament to youth interrupted, to a life paused forever. As the years passed, Pripyat became a symbol of the unseen costs of progress. The city that promised a bright future instead became a frozen monument to disaster and loss. But within its quiet streets and abandoned buildings, the school especially, the memory of children remains alive, not just in photographs or stories, but in something deeper, a presence, a whisper, a reminder. In the next section, we will explore how the passage of time transformed the school from a place of learning into a haunting ruin, and how nature and memory entwine to shape the echoes that remain. Before it became a ghost city, Pripyat was something else entirely. It was a symbol of modernity, a city not born from centuries of slow development, but from a blueprint. Every apartment block, every school, every cafe, all of it was planned and placed like pieces on a chessboard. Built in 1970, Pripyat was constructed to house the workers of the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant, one of the most ambitious and advanced energy projects in the Soviet Union. It was named after the Pripyat River, which flowed calmly nearby, and its streets were filled not with the past, but with promises of the future. Unlike the gloomy, grey images often associated with the Soviet era, Pripyat was clean, open, bright. Its buildings were surrounded by trees and flowers, wide boulevards cut through the city, and statues of workers and scientists stood like guardians on the corners. There were cinemas, sports centers, libraries, and swimming pools. The people who lived there weren't just workers, they were chosen: scientists, engineers, mathematicians, technicians, young families full of optimism. The average age in Pripyat was just 26, and that youthful energy was everywhere, but most of all, it was in the schools. At the heart of this carefully designed city stood School Number 1, one of 15 schools scattered throughout the city. 5 were kindergartens, 3 were secondary schools, but School Number 1 was special. It was the largest and most central, serving children of all ages. Built with concrete and glass, it was a large rectangular structure filled with hallways, chalkboards, gymnasiums, and endless tiny desks. It was not beautiful in the traditional sense, but it was proud, functional, full of light and purpose. Inside, it was busy and alive. The walls were decorated with children's drawings, brightly painted murals of Soviet heroes and nature scenes. In the mornings, the halls filled with the clatter of shoes, the shuffle of uniforms, the sound of bells and lessons and laughter. Children recited poems, teachers chalked equations, tiny hands folded paper cranes and drew suns with smiling faces. There was structure. Yes, this was the Soviet Union, but there was also joy. Children played in the courtyards. They shared stories and snacks. They wore the red scarves of the young pioneers with pride. Their days were filled with songs, sports, math, and dreams. Parents saw a future here, a safe one, a clean one. The power plant would provide electricity. The party would provide order. The city would provide stability. And the children, the next generation, would grow up smarter, healthier, and stronger. In the spring of 1986, all of that was in motion. That April, the school year was winding toward its final stretch. Students were preparing for exams. Teachers were finalizing their curriculums. The weather was warming. The sidewalks were blooming with tulips. Children ran freely through courtyards and parks. School windows were propped open to let in the breeze. Classrooms were full of anticipation, not of tragedy, but of summer. The last photos taken inside School Number 1 show exactly what you'd expect. Smiling children standing in rows, teachers holding open books, chalk-dusted blackboards, paper decorations hanging from the ceiling, a volleyball team posing in their gym uniforms, all perfectly ordinary, all heartbreakingly innocent. And then, on April 26th, everything stopped. That night, just after 1:23 a.m., Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. The blast was massive, sending radioactive materials high into the atmosphere. But in Pripyat, just 3 kilometers away, there were no alarms, no sirens, no announcements. The morning of April 26th began as if nothing had happened. Children woke up, brushed their teeth, packed their bags, and walked to school. Inside School Number 1, the day went on. Teachers noticed strange behavior. Some students complained of headaches. The air felt heavy. One teacher later recalled seeing an unusual shimmer in the sky, like heat rising from asphalt, even though it was cool outside. Some students wore gas masks, part of a drill, they were told. Others weren't concerned at all. It was a normal school day, at least on the surface. But slowly, unease spread. Soldiers appeared on street corners. Some parents stopped by the school to ask if everything was okay. Teachers tried to carry on with lessons, but the atmosphere was changing. That night, the truth began to leak out in whispers. Something had happened, something bad. The next day, April 27th, the evacuation order came. Pripyat's entire population was told to pack quickly and prepare to leave. Buses lined the streets. Residents were told it would only be 3 days, just enough time to contain a minor emergency. They were instructed to bring essential documents, some clothes, and a bit of food. Nothing more. People left pets behind, plants, possessions, and schools. Inside school number 1, nothing was packed. There was no time. Notebooks were left open. Desks were untouched. Shoes remained under benches. The aquarium still had water. A math problem still hung on the board. It was not abandoned. It was interrupted. And then the children were gone. The evacuation, meant to last 3 days, became permanent. Radiation blanketed the city. The trees turned red, then black. Paint peeled from the buildings. Grass grew through the playgrounds. But the school remained as it was, trapped in time. Today, school number 1 is a ruin, but a strangely intact one. Gas masks lie scattered on the floor. Drawings still hang on the walls. A dusty piano waits in the corner of the assembly room. The silence inside is profound. Not dead, just waiting. Visitors say it feels like someone just stepped out of the room, that the air still carries the sound of voices, that the walls remember. It is a building full of memory, a monument to a life paused mid-sentence. And to the children, who never came back to finish it, welcome, you're safe here. Tonight's story takes us to a place frozen in time, a school where children's voices once filled the air, and now only silence remains. Let your mind settle, breathe slowly, and come with me into the quiet ruins of a city that was never supposed to die. And so now, the fire has quieted, the earth rests again. The people who once fled the mountain have returned, not to rebuild what was lost, but to remember it, to honor it, to carry it gently forward. What began as a simple village, tucked in the folds of Michoacan, became a legend told in ash and stone, a place where faith once filled the air like song, where rituals danced beneath candlelight, and where a single church built with hands, with hope, and with heart, refused to burn when the world around it did. In its silence, the church speaks louder than ever, not through miracles shouted from mountaintops, but through the quiet persistence of stone, through stories passed from grandmother to grandson, through footsteps carefully placed upon cooled lava, through the hands that still light candles, still whisper prayers, still listen. As you rest now, know this. There are places in this world that hold memory like breath, places that remember not just names and dates, but feeling. And if you listen closely, they'll remember you too. The story of San Juan Parangaricutiro isn't one of destruction. It's one of endurance, of sacred things that survive, of rituals that remain, of churches that still stand. Even in the fire, even in the ash, even now, good night. Return once more to the edge of the lava field, where jagged black stone stretches across the earth like a wound that never closed. The volcano Paricutin still sleeps quietly in the distance, its cone softened by time, and in the middle of it all, like a breath still held, stands what remains of San Juan Parangaricutiro, or more precisely, what refused to leave. The ruins of the church are weathered now. The lava that once burned so hot is cool, cracked and settled. Moss has taken root in the crevices. The wind moves more freely between the broken walls. But still, something clings to this place. Not just memory, not just stone, but presence. When you stand at the threshold of the old church, it doesn't feel like you're entering a ruin. It feels like you're being received. The open roof becomes a sky lantern, casting soft light onto the scorched altar. Birds perch in the corners where statues once stood. The thick, uneven floor of black rock isn't hostile. It's sacred. You don't walk here, you tread. What remains of San Juan is more than stone. It is story, it is ritual, and it is the strange, invisible way the land holds memory. You can feel it, even if you don't have the words for it. The people who once lived here say the land remembers, that it carries sound, scent, sorrow, and prayer. The Purepecha people, whose culture threads through this story like roots in volcanic soil, believe that every mountain and field is alive, and not in metaphor. In truth, they see spirit in stone, in tree bark, in the heat beneath the earth. And so, when they speak of the volcano, They don't speak only of destruction, they speak of awakening, of the earth stretching after centuries of silence, of the land testing its children, asking if they still remembered how to listen. Some say the people had forgotten to make offerings to the mountain. Others say the land was reminding them of its strength. But all agree, it was not random. It was part of a conversation far older than the village itself. After the eruption, that conversation deepened. In the new village, life eventually resumed. But something had shifted. The connection to the old land, to the buried village, remained. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was spiritual. The villagers didn't leave the past behind. They carried it with them, and they made sure their children would carry it too. In homes across Nuevo San Juan, there are photos of the church before the eruption. Tall and white and proud, its twin bell towers rising like arms in prayer. There are also photos of the church after, half consumed by lava, but still standing, surrounded by silence. These images are not simply historical records. They are relics, symbols of survival, proof that something endures when all else is lost. Every year, on the anniversary of the eruption, families return to the ruins. They don't come in great numbers, and there are no formal ceremonies. But the same quiet rituals always unfold. Candles are lit, prayers are murmured, and silence is shared. Some bring guitars and sing old hymns. Some walk barefoot across the lava as an act of humility. Children are told the story once more, not just what happened, but why it matters. Because the story of the church is not just about survival. It is about being remembered by each other, by history, and even by the land itself. There are villagers who swear that dreams brought them back here, dreams of the church glowing like gold in the night, dreams of voices rising from the stone, dreams of ancestors standing at the altar waiting to speak. Whether or not you believe in such things doesn't change the feeling you get when you visit. There is something here that listens. And maybe that's the quiet truth behind why this church matters. It is a place that receives. It receives sorrow, reverence, awe, grief, wonder, and stillness. It gives nothing back but silence, but the kind of silence that fills rather than empties. It offers no answers, only presence. In recent years, new generations of artists, scholars, and spiritual seekers have found their way here. Some come to sketch or photograph the site. Others write songs or poems inspired by its endurance. A few come to simply sit, hour after hour, with no agenda but to be near what survived. There's no official sign marking the edge of the church ruins. No visitor center, no souvenir stand, no guided tour. That's intentional. The locals believe that the place must remain quiet to remain sacred. Too much attention, too much noise might drown the voice that still hums here. And what is that voice saying? Perhaps it's reminding us that not everything strong is loud, that not all miracles involve thunder and light. Some are soft, some simply persist. A church built with devotion and touched by ritual stood in the path of fire, and it did not fall. That is the miracle. And perhaps the land remembers not just the eruption, but the hands that built the church, the children that were baptized there, the weddings, the funerals, the whispered prayers, the sacred songs. Maybe the reason the church still stands is because the land chose to hold it, just as it holds the memory of those who loved it. Now, as this story comes to a close, picture the scene once more. The cracked black lava like an ocean frozen mid-wave. The old stone walls reaching upward, a breeze moving through empty windows. Somewhere a candle flickers beside the altar, and overhead, the open sky, vast and watchful. You are not alone here. The past breathes beside you, and the church still stands. There are stories that end with a quiet sigh, soft, complete, final, but some stories resist such endings. They settle instead into the cracks of time, like seeds beneath stone, waiting to grow again. The story of the church that refused to burn is not one that concludes, it lingers, it spreads. It touches people far from the lava fields of Michoacán, reaching beyond the village that was buried and the volcano that still sleeps. Its legacy is not only in stone, but in memory, in culture, and in the quiet endurance of the human spirit. Long after the eruption ended, after the villagers had moved on and the lava had hardened into black walls across the land, the story of San Juan Parangaricatiro continued to echo. What began as a local memory, carried in family stories and quiet rituals, slowly became something more universal, something symbolic. Today, the image of the half-buried church stands among the most enduring photographs in Mexican cultural history. It is printed in textbooks, hung on walls in schools, and used in documentaries, travel essays, and even spiritual reflections. But its fame does not come from spectacle, it comes from stillness, the way it reminds us, without saying a word, of what survives. In the years since the eruption, artists, poets, and musicians have drawn inspiration from the church and the village. Murals have been painted showing the eruption, with the church untouched by fire, glowing with soft light. Poems have described it as a heart that kept beating beneath the ash. Songs, sung in both Spanish and Purépecha, recall the night the mountain roared and the people prayed, and how something in the dark answered. The site itself has changed slowly. Moss now creeps over the lower stones. Small shrubs grow in cracks where the lava cooled unevenly. The air, once filled with ash and smoke, is clear now, often still, with only birdsong breaking the silence. Yet the sense of presence remains. Visitors often speak of a feeling there like being watched or remembered or even gently welcomed. Tourism, while modest and mostly respectful, has brought more attention to the ruins. Travelers arrive by foot or horseback along narrow trails that wind through hardened lava. Some come as skeptics, curious about the so-called miracle church. Others come seeking something less tangible, a moment of peace, a sense of awe, or simply to be near a place that has endured. Local communities have worked to preserve not just the structure, but the meaning. They guard the stories carefully, telling them not like historical facts, but like prayers. You'll rarely hear anyone boast about the church's survival. Instead, they speak of it with humility, as if it was never theirs to claim. The church chose to stay, one elder once said quietly, so we must choose to remember. The memory of the eruption has shaped more than just the identity of the village. It's influenced the way people think about land, time, and spirit. For the Purépecha people, the story confirms what their ancestors always believed, that the earth is alive, and that the things built with love and purpose can endure even when the world around them changes. The eruption of Houtouwan is still studied in geology classes. Scientists often marvel at the chance to observe a volcano's full life cycle, from sudden birth to long dormancy. It remains a textbook case. But outside the textbooks, among those who live near the site or carry its story, it's not the science that holds the most weight. It's the silence, the stone, the soft voice of something sacred that spoke not through thunder or fire, but through what it chose not to destroy. There is something deeply human in the way we respond to ruins. We are drawn to them, not just because they show us what has been lost, but because they suggest what can be kept. They remind us that even after devastation, something can still stand, something can still hold beauty, dignity, and grace. In this way, the church at San Juan Parangaricutiro has become a kind of quiet lighthouse, not to guide ships but to steady hearts. A symbol not only of resilience but of how memory itself can become sacred ground. Local festivals still honor the village that once was. Children in the new town dress in traditional clothing, reenacting the days before the eruption. Dances are performed to the beat of ancient drums. Stories are told aloud under the stars, just as they were in the past. And always the church is mentioned, not just as a building, but as a spirit. In modern times, with the rise of digital storytelling, the legend has reached further still. Videos, essays, and documentaries in multiple languages share the tale. People around the world now know of this little church that refused to burn, and while many admire the photos and marvel at the facts, there are some who feel a quiet connection, who understand that this isn't just about a volcano or a miracle, it's about all of us. Because every person, in some way, stands in their own field of ash. Every life has its eruptions, and if we're lucky, if we are grounded in something meaningful, maybe something inside us will remain untouched, unburned, and unbroken. As you rest now, think of the church, silent, surrounded, standing. Let it be a symbol of what endures when everything else falls away. Let it remind you that memory is not just a record of the past, it is a shelter, and that even among ruins, something sacred always remains. In the final section of this story, we'll return once more to the heart of the village, where memory, faith, and nature meet, and consider what it truly means to be remembered by the land itself. Some places are not just remembered, they remember you. That idea lingers softly in the air as visitors walk the winding path through the lava fields toward the half-buried church of San Juan Parangaricutiro. Surrounded by miles of dark volcanic stone, it stands there quietly, as if waiting. Not for attention, not for crowds, but simply waiting for the next soul to arrive and listen. To those who come here today, the journey is often personal. Some are descendants of the villagers who fled the eruption and grew up hearing their grandparents speak of ash falling like snow and of nights filled with orange fire. Others are travelers, drawn by curiosity, mysticism, or the strange poetic beauty of a place so defiant it refused to vanish. Whatever brings them, they often leave with more than they expected. From the first moment the ruins come into view, rising unexpectedly from the jagged black sea of cooled lava, something shifts. The tall stone bell tower juts upward, weathered but strong, and just beside it the fragmented walls stretch like ribs of a sleeping giant. There is no roof now, just the open sky, and yet the space within still feels enclosed, protected, sacred. Inside, it's quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but of reverence, the kind of quiet you might hear in an ancient forest or a candle-lit chapel at dusk. Even the footsteps of visitors seem to soften, as if the ground itself asks for gentleness. People do not rush here, they linger, they touch the walls. Some leave small offerings, flowers, crosses made from twigs, handwritten notes folded carefully and tucked into cracks in the stone. Others simply sit for a while, heads bowed, eyes closed, breathing in the silence. It's not uncommon for people to cry here, and when they do, no one asks why. What's striking is that no formal signage explains the site in depth. There are no bright placards, no museum audio tours, no arrows pointing to photo spots. The church stands on its own, and the stories are passed along through word of mouth, soft conversations, and shared memories. Locals who guide visitors don't recite rehearsed speeches. They tell it like a memory, not a history. They speak of how the church stood while the village fell, how it seemed to glow in the ash-covered night, how even as lava surrounded it, the heart of the building, the altar, the cross, the walls that had witnessed generations remained intact. And always, they speak of how the people who had lost everything still returned here, year after year, to pray among the stone and soot. In this way, the church is not just a relic, it is a living story. A story of endurance, yes, but also of identity. For the descendants of San Juan Parangaricatero, it serves as a connection to their ancestors and to the spirit of the land itself. To visit it is not to remember what was destroyed, but what remained. In Nuevo San Juan, the village built after the eruption, these ties to the old church are still deeply felt. Though decades have passed, it remains common for families to make annual pilgrimages back to the ruins. On certain holy days, candles line the edge of the lava field, and voices rise in prayer. Not in grand processions, but in quiet gatherings, soft songs, whispered intentions, old prayers remembered from childhood. Local artisans craft wooden replicas of the church, painted in earth tones and set with tiny crosses. Elders keep stones taken from the church's foundations, wrapped in cloth, tucked into drawers like relics. School children are taught not just the science of the eruption, but the stories about the miracle, about the sacredness of place, and about what it means to belong to something that was almost lost. And yet the church doesn't belong only to the past. In many ways, it remains a symbol for the present, for endurance, for faith, for the quiet strength of rural life, and for the deep spiritual traditions of the Purepecha people. Because while much attention has been paid to the eruption and the church's survival, less is often said about the rituals that continue around it. There are still those who carry out ceremonies among the ruins, quiet, unannounced, usually at dawn or dusk. They bring offerings, ears of corn, woven cloth, water, ash. They burn herbs and whisper prayers in a language older than the stones. These aren't performances. The volcano, too, has quieted but has never been forgotten. Its black cone looms in the distance, a permanent reminder that the earth breathes and shifts and sometimes erupts without warning. But it is not feared in the same way it once was. Instead, it is respected. It is included in the ceremonies, named in prayers, honored like a relative. So now, picture this scene as evening falls. A golden sun sinking behind the black horizon, long shadows stretching across the lava fields, the silhouette of the church sharp against the sky, a few villagers standing in the broken archway, heads bowed, hands folded, smoke rising from a bundle of burning copal, silence, deep and warm, settling over everything. This is what remains. Not just a ruin, but a place that listens, a place that carries the weight of hundreds of voices and still whispers them back, gently, to those who are willing to hear. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore the deeper legacy of the church, how its story continues to shape identity, art, belief, and the human desire to find meaning in disaster. Walk slowly now. The lava underfoot has long since cooled, but the air still remembers. The wind carries the soft hum of stories, not told loudly, but whispered, as if passed from stone to tree, from candle to breath. This is not just a tale of fire and ruin. It is a story of memory becoming myth, and of how a small village church, half buried in volcanic rock, came to live forever in the minds of those who had lost everything. Once the people of San Juan Parangaricatero resettled and rebuilt their lives in the new village nearby, the story of the church didn't remain behind. It followed them into their conversations, into the lullabies they sang to their children, into the prayers they whispered when the earth trembled again. Over time, those stories began to shift. Facts remained, but meaning deepened. The church's survival became more than just an act of nature. It became sacred. Elders spoke of how, during the height of the eruption, They had seen the church glow, not from fire, but from a golden light within. Some claimed that when the lava approached its walls, it stopped, as if repelled by something unseen. Others said they heard hymns coming from inside the building, even after it had been evacuated. These weren't meant as factual reports, but as reflections of awe. Truth, in a place like this, does not always wear the clothes of science. The myth of the unburned church grew with each telling, but it never lost its core, that something had protected it. Whether it was divine intervention, ancestral spirits, or the mountain itself showing mercy, everyone had their own version. What united all these beliefs was reverence. As the decades passed, the ruins became a pilgrimage site, not in the formal religious sense, but in a quieter, more intimate way. People came not only to see the church, but to feel it. They touched the lava, still rough and sharp in places, and placed their hands on the stone walls that had endured. Some cried, some prayed, some simply sat and listened. There were stories, too, of people having dreams before they visited. Dreams of a church floating on black seas, of ancestors pointing the way through smoke and ash, of music without source, heard only at the foot of the church's altar. Whether these stories were shared around kitchen tables, told by tour guides, or etched in travelers' journals, they added layers to the place, like mist weaving through the trees. Children who grew up hearing these tales carried them into adulthood. Some became storytellers themselves, passing down the myths to newer generations. Others became protectors of the site, working to preserve the ruins and ensure the stories were not forgotten or misused. Interestingly, the church also became a space where the line between indigenous tradition and Catholic faith blurred even further. For centuries, the Purepecha people had woven their ancestral beliefs into Christian practices. After the eruption, that weaving became tighter, more symbolic. The church wasn't just a Christian monument anymore. It was also seen as a vessel of older powers, guardians of earth, wind and fire, a sacred meeting point between worlds. In this way, the church became more than an artifact. It became a threshold. Visitors who come with open hearts often describe a feeling of weightless silence when they step into the shell of the church. The roof is gone, but the sky above feels like a dome. The altar is worn, but seems strangely whole. Light filters through broken windows in soft golden beams, as if time is paused there, not dead, just deeply resting. Some say the church offers healing, that to walk its perimeter is to let go of something heavy, that to kneel among the ash is to find clarity. There are no formal rituals left to guide them, but somehow, everyone seems to know what to do. Light a candle, speak softly, breathe deeply, let the silence answer you. In recent years, efforts to document and archive these stories have grown. Scholars have come with notebooks and microphones, but the villagers are careful. They know that sacred things can be broken by too much analysis. They share their stories, but they protect their mystery. Not everything needs to be explained. Some truths live best in the in-between. This is the great lesson of the church that refused to burn. That some places are not just remembered, they remember you. That some ruins are not broken, they're still speaking. And that some fires don't destroy, they reveal. As you rest now and let this part of the story settle, picture the church as it stands today, half buried in lava, yet impossibly alive. Wind passes gently through its empty windows. Moss grows along the stone. Birds nest in the cracks of its bell tower. And somewhere in the silence, if you listen closely, you might still hear the echo of a hymn. In the next section, we'll walk deeper into the role this place plays today, how it shapes identity, remembrance, and the quiet resilience of a people who remember not just what was lost, but what endured. When the ground finally grew still and the fires quieted, the world left behind looked nothing like the one the villagers had known. What had once been fertile fields and vibrant homes was now a hardened black desert of volcanic rock, cracked, scorched, and silent. The eruption of Houtouwan had reshaped not only the land but the lives and spirits of all who once lived in San Juan Parangaracutir. In the immediate aftermath, there was no celebration, there was only silence. The kind of silence that hangs in the air after a storm has passed, heavy, still, and uncertain. Families who had evacuated months or even years earlier stood on the edges of the lava fields, staring out at what remained. Some wept, others simply watched, unable to speak. Their village was gone, but something unexpected remained. Rising from the hardened sea of black rock like an island in a storm, stood the church, or rather part of it. The steeple and sections of the walls had survived the lava's advance, protruding eerily from the basalt like the bones of a forgotten cathedral. The altar, buried beneath ash and cooled stone, remained intact beneath layers of darkness. It became clear that this was no ordinary ruin. People whispered that the church had survived for a reason, that its survival was a message. a sign from the divine, or from the earth itself. In the eyes of many, it was sacred. Though the village could not be saved, the church became a beacon, a spiritual and cultural monument, drawing visitors not only from neighboring regions, but eventually from across the world. Pilgrims came to pray, scientists came to study, artists came to sketch and capture the strange beauty of this half-swallowed sanctuary. Meanwhile, the displaced villagers had to begin their lives again. Most resettled in a new town called Nuevo San Juan Parangaricatiro, just a few kilometers away, beyond the reach of the lava. The transition was not easy. The land was unfamiliar, and the sense of disconnection from their ancestral homes was profound. But the community remained strong, bound by shared memory, tradition, and the guiding presence of the church that had not burned. In this new town, traditions were not forgotten. The people continued to observe the same festivals, conduct the same rituals, and sing the same songs passed down for generations. But now, they also added new prayers, ones of survival, resilience, and gratitude for the strange miracle left behind in the ashes. Each year, many villagers returned to the ruins of the old church to hold ceremonies. They brought flowers and candles, placing them along the stone that still bore the heat of the earth's fury. These gatherings were quiet and reverent. Elders spoke in soft tones about the old village, telling stories to the younger generations so the memory would not fade. Scientists who visited the site offered logical explanations. They said the church had been built on slightly elevated ground, that the lava cooled before it could rise high enough to destroy the structure. They studied the flow paths and rock composition and mapped the movement of the eruption in meticulous detail. But for the villagers, the church's endurance wasn't about geology, it was about meaning. It had become a living symbol, a sign that while everything else could be taken, some things, faith, memory, and spirit, could remain untouched. In time, the story of the church spread. Documentaries, articles, and photographs brought international attention to the ruins. Some came seeking spiritual inspiration, others came chasing mystery, but all left with a sense of awe, the kind that only silence and stone can evoke. Nature, too, slowly began to reclaim the scarred land. Small plants pushed their way through cracks in the lava. Wildflowers bloomed where ash had once fallen like snow. Birds returned to nest in the crevices of the church walls. Life was beginning again, just as it always does, slowly, quietly, persistently. The church ruins, now part of a protected area, stand as both a reminder and a lesson. They remind us that the earth is alive and powerful, and that our place upon it is always temporary. They teach us that resilience is not about resisting change, but about finding meaning within it. For the descendants of San Juan Parangaricatiro, the old church is not just a monument, it is part of them. It is where their grandparents were married, where their parents were baptized, where generations of joy and sorrow were held in shared spaces of ritual and faith. As we move forward in this story, let us carry with us the quiet power of that church. Let us walk gently across the lava fields in our minds, listening not just to the silence, but to the voices it holds. They are the voices of a people who endured fire and who found, in the ashes, a reason to believe again. In the next part, we will explore how these stories transformed into legends, and how myth, memory, and mystery became woven into the very stones of this sacred ruin. The earth began to tremble gently at first, a subtle whisper beneath the feet of San Juan Parangaricatiro's villagers. Those faint tremors soon grew louder, shaking the ground and rattling windows. The land itself seemed to be awakening from a deep slumber, stirring with a force both ancient and immense. On February 20th, 1943, the earth finally cracked open. What started as a small fissure in a farmer's field rapidly transformed into a towering column of smoke, ash, and fire. The birth of Houtouwan volcano was sudden and fierce, a spectacle of nature's power that few could have imagined. For 9 long years, the volcano erupted. Its fiery breath reshaped the land, its molten lava swallowing everything in its path. Forests burned, rivers of molten rock flowed, and ash fell like grey snow, blanketing the village and its surroundings. The villagers watched with a mix of fear, awe, and disbelief as their home was slowly consumed. Crops died beneath the choking ash, and the air grew heavy with sulfur and smoke. Livestock fled or perished. Roads became impassable, and communication with neighboring areas grew difficult. Despite the devastation, many refused to leave immediately. Their deep ties to the land and the community anchored them. They believed in the power of faith and ritual to protect and guide them through the disaster. Scientists from around the world came to study Houtouwan, intrigued by its unprecedented birth and growth. This was the first time a volcano's life cycle had been observed from its very beginning, offering invaluable insights into geology and volcanology. The eruption began with explosive bursts, sending ash columns high into the sky, pyroclastic flows, fast-moving currents of hot gas and volcanic matter surged down the slopes, destroying everything in their path. Lava fountains and flows marked the landscape with rivers of glowing rock. The lava itself was relentless, creeping slowly but inevitably toward the village. Homes, fields, and forests fell beneath its dark, molten weight. The villagers could only watch as the earth they had known transformed beyond recognition. Amid this destruction, the church became a silent sentinel. When the lava reached it, instead of consuming the building, it flowed around and partially buried the structure. The thick, slow-moving lava cooled quickly against the church's stone walls, forming a protective shell that preserved the building. The image of the half-buried church, standing firm amidst the blackened wasteland, captured imaginations worldwide. To many, it became a symbol of hope, an anchor of faith in a landscape otherwise defined by loss. The scientific explanations for this phenomenon are fascinating. Lava flow dynamics, cooling rates, and the physical properties of the church's materials all contributed to its preservation. Yet no matter the explanation, the church's endurance feels like a miracle. The villagers' connection to this miracle was profound. They believed that their prayers, rituals, and faith had shielded the church from destruction. The building was seen not just as a structure, but as a guardian spirit watching over the community. As the years passed, the eruption slowed and eventually ceased. The land around San Juan Parangaricatiro was forever changed, a new terrain shaped by fire and stone. The village itself was lost beneath layers of volcanic rock, but the church remained, a haunting relic emerging from the lava fields. Its walls told a story of resilience, a story echoed in the hearts of the people who had once called this place home. Today, the ruins stand as a testament to nature's duality, its power to destroy, and its capacity to inspire awe and reverence. Visitors who come here are reminded of the delicate balance between humanity and the earth. The church's survival invites us to reflect on our own vulnerabilities and strengths. It asks us to consider what anchors us when the world shifts beneath our feet. It whispers of faith, tradition, and the enduring human spirit. As you listen, imagine the heat of molten lava creeping slowly forward, the sky darkened by ash clouds, and the quiet defiance of a church refusing to be consumed. Feel the tension between destruction and preservation, chaos and calm. This chapter of our story offers both a window into geological wonder and a meditation on resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. In the next section, we will explore the aftermath, how the landscape healed, how the people rebuilt their lives, and how the church's legacy continues to inspire. As the fiery mountain awakened, the people of San Juan Parangaricatiro did not face this new threat alone. Their strength was rooted deeply in tradition, in rituals passed down through generations, connecting them to the earth, the spirits, and the divine. These sacred practices provided comfort and guidance in a time when the ground beneath them was breaking apart. The Purepecha people, indigenous to this region, held a rich spiritual relationship with the natural world. Their rituals were woven into every part of life, from planting and harvesting to healing and celebration. When the volcano erupted, these customs became lifelines, helping the villagers to understand and endure the upheaval. Central to their faith was the belief that the land itself was alive, animated by forces both seen and unseen. Mountains were sacred, portals between worlds. The eruption of Paracutin was not just a geological event, but a profound spiritual moment, a conversation between earth and people, a test of faith. In the days following the first eruption, villagers gathered in the church, seeking solace and strength. The church was the heart of their community, a sanctuary where prayers were offered to San Juan Bautista for protection. Candles flickered in the dim light, incense smoke curled in the air, carrying the hopes and fears of the congregation upward. Traditional ceremonies, often held in the open air near the volcano's edges, blended Catholic rites with indigenous customs, a syncretism born of centuries of cultural blending. Offerings of maize, flowers, and copal were laid upon altars, songs in native tongue rose to the sky, and prayers were chanted to calm the spirit of the mountain. These rituals were believed to placate the forces of nature and call for mercy. Elders acted as spiritual guides, leading the community through rites that balanced respect and supplication. They taught that the volcano was not an enemy, but a powerful ancestor expressing its will, demanding acknowledgement and harmony. The church itself, with its steadfast walls and sacred icons, was a symbol of hope amid destruction. Inside, the faithful continued to gather, even as ash darkened the sky and tremors shook the ground. The rituals offered a sense of continuity, a thread linking past, present, and future. Children learned the prayers and songs, their voices rising alongside the elders. Despite the fear and uncertainty, these moments created a sense of unity and resilience. The community held fast to the belief that their rituals could influence the course of events. As the lava crept closer, engulfing homes and fields, villagers adapted their practices. Processions moved from the village square to safer ground, carrying sacred objects and relics. Pilgrimages to the church ruins became acts of devotion and remembrance. The mixture of faith and nature created a unique cultural landscape, a place where human courage met the overwhelming forces of the earth. This spiritual landscape remains etched in memory and legend, passed down through stories and songs. Outside observers marveled at how the villagers maintained their traditions despite devastation. Anthropologists documented the ceremonies, noting how they embodied a deep understanding of the environment and a profound respect for the unseen. In time, the eruption slowed, and new land formed from the cooled lava. The church, half buried yet unbroken, became a pilgrimage site, a testament to faith's endurance. Visitors came not only to see the geological wonder, but to feel the sacred presence that seemed to linger among the ruins. Today, descendants of the original villagers continue to honor these rituals. Annual ceremonies commemorate the volcano's birth and the church's survival, blending history and spirituality. These events are quiet, reverent, and deeply moving, a living link to a past that shaped identity and place. As you listen, imagine the flickering candlelight inside the church, the whispered prayers carried by the breeze, and the sacred songs echoing across the ash-covered land. Feel the connection between earth and spirit, between destruction and hope. This story invites us to reflect on how humans find meaning and strength amid natural disaster. It reminds us that faith, tradition, and community are powerful forces that shape resilience. In the next section, we will explore the scientific perspective, the eruption itself, how it transformed the landscape, and the lasting impact on the environment and people. Welcome. Find a comfortable place, let your body relax, and prepare to journey with me into a story of resilience, mystery, and quiet miracles. This is a tale whispered through time, told softly by the winds that sweep across an ancient landscape. Listen with calm and ease, and allow these words to carry you gently, like the slow flow of lava that shaped a village and a church that refused to burn. Long before the earth trembled and the skies darkened, there was a small village nestled in the heart of Mexico's Michoacán region. San Juan Parangaricatiro was a place where tradition thrived and daily life flowed in harmony with nature's rhythms. The villagers, mainly Purépecha people, lived simply but richly, tending fields, crafting pottery, and honoring the land and their ancestors with deep respect. The village was surrounded by lush forests and fertile soil, nourished by centuries of volcanic activity that had shaped the landscape. The people knew the power of the earth beneath their feet. The mountains and volcanoes were both providers and keepers of secrets, deserving reverence and care. San Juan Parangaricatiro was a community bound tightly by faith and ritual. The heart of the village was its church, a small but sturdy stone building that served as a sanctuary, a gathering place, and a symbol of hope. It was dedicated to San Juan Bautista, a protector and patron whose presence was felt deeply by all. The church was built with the hands of villagers themselves, each stone laid with intention, each beam raised with prayer. It was more than a building, it was a living part of the community, a witness to births, marriages, festivals, and quiet moments of reflection. Inside, the air was always thick with the scent of burning copal incense and fresh flowers. The walls were adorned with colorful murals depicting saints and local legends, painted by skilled artisans who infused every stroke with devotion. The church bell rang out daily, calling villagers to mass, marking the passage of time and signaling celebrations and ceremonies. Children learned their first prayers here, couples took their vows, and elders sought comfort during hard times. Life in San Juan Parangaricatiro was peaceful, but not without its challenges. The villagers respected the nearby volcano Paricutain, understanding its power and unpredictability. Oral traditions spoke of eruptions centuries before, of the land's ability to change suddenly and forever. In February 1943, the earth began to stir. At first, there were faint tremors, whispers beneath the soil that many dismissed as distant or harmless. But soon the ground cracked open in a farmer's field just miles from the village, and a column of smoke and ash began to rise. The villagers watched in awe and growing fear as the volcano Paracutin was born before their eyes. What started as a small fissure rapidly grew into a towering cone of fire and stone, spewing ash, lava, and gases that darkened the skies. The eruption changed everything. Crops were buried under ash, water sources became contaminated, and the air filled with a choking haze. The villagers faced a difficult choice: to stay and fight for their homes, or to leave everything behind for an uncertain future. Despite the danger, many refused to abandon their land immediately. Their connection to the earth, their homes, and the church was profound. Stories tell of villagers gathering in the church, praying for protection, for calm, and for the safety of their families. The eruption raged for 9 years, gradually consuming the surrounding landscape. Lava flows reached the edges of the village, burning forests, roads, and fields. One by one, homes were swallowed by molten rock. Yet amid this destruction, a miracle captured the hearts and imaginations of those near and far. The church itself stood firm, resisting the lava's relentless advance. Though surrounded and partially buried by thick black rock, its walls remained standing. The image of the church, half buried but unyielding, became a symbol of hope and endurance. It seemed to defy the very forces of nature that threatened to erase the village from memory. Scientists and volcanologists studied the eruption closely, marveling at how the church endured. Theories abound about how the lava cooled and solidified around the structure without consuming it entirely. To the villagers, the church was not just stone and mortar, it was a sacred protector, a testament to their faith and connection to the land. Today, the ruins of San Parangaricatiro's church rise from a vast blackened landscape. Visitors who come here are greeted by the haunting silhouette of its walls against the sky, a reminder of nature's power and human resilience. As you listen, allow yourself to feel the weight of this story, the calm before the storm, the terrifying birth of a volcano, and the quiet strength of a community rooted deeply in tradition and faith. In the next section, we will explore the rituals and beliefs that sustained the villagers through this ordeal, and the ancient customs that helped them find meaning amid the chaos.